From the New York City area, welcome to the Badass Counseling Show, where the master badass himself, Sven Erlandson, takes you deep and gives balm for the soul, baby.
Hello, hello, fine people. It is great to have you here. This is the Badass Counseling Show. Where are you listening from? If you are in Dublin, I love you. I love the Irish. God bless the Irish. If you're down under, my Aussie folk down there, it's great to have you checking in. Or if you are a svenska flicka, it's especially good to have you here. And all of our listeners down in South Africa as well as along the Baltic and so many other places in the world. And of course, across the United States and Canada, our dear friends over in Seattle especially. It's great to have you here listening in to the show. My name is Sven Erlandson, your host. I am joined in our studio by KC. KC, that's a K and that's a C. That's not Casey, it's K and then a C. And she's quite particular about that. And then Rob, and that's a R and an Ob. And Rob is sitting next to me. Rob, what say ye?
Welcome to Fun with Diphthongs.
Well, I've been called a dip plenty of times in my life. This is not the first.
And I'm never too old to rock and roll, so let's get going.
Indeed, we shall. Rob, will you please tell us about Sasha?
Absolutely, Sven. Sasha wrote in with the subject line, completely lost. And the message says, Dearest Sven, I need your help and guidance. I'm losing my mind trying to figure out why I continue to fall for all the wrong guys. Why do I get attached so easily, yet trust so little? Every time I think I'm ready to date and I put myself out there, I'm quickly reminded why I've remained single for the past 9 years. How many times can one's heart break before there's nothing left to break? Maybe some people aren't meant to ever experience what it feels like to be truly loved. What is wrong with me? Please help.
Sasha, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Let's go ahead and get to work. So,
sure.
All right. Fall for the wrong guys, get attached so easily. I've remained single 9 years. You've had your heart broken a lot. Well, let me just ask you a silly question to start. You pose the question, why do I get attached so easily, yet I trust so little? What do you believe your reason is that you get attached so easily?
I think that I'm just what you would say is like an extreme giver. I tend to get attached to people who don't really have anything to offer me. They just want. So I think that's part of the problem.
Sure. And let me ask you this. You said, why do I get attached so easily? This is going to sound like a silly question.
Yep.
Why is it bad to get attached easily? Why is that bad? Help me understand.
I think for me, because it never pans out. It never leads to anything except for heartache. So that's a bad thing for me.
The heartache is the bad part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the truth is, I get attached easily too. I do. I just I'm one of those people. It's like, I'll know I fucking love you in like 2 weeks and I'll just say it. Listen, I'm falling in love with you. I really am. And I can't keep it in. And I don't even give a shit. And you know what? And a lot of people would say, well, that's crazy. You can't do that. And it's like, I choose to live this way. This is how I choose to live. And I do it knowing I might get my heart broken.
Right.
And I've had I've lost, oh Lord, some really terrific women. And I've lived in about, 5, 6 different states in the U.S. I have had my heart broken by some really terrific women. And I guess for me personally, and this is just me, not trying to push this on you. For me personally, it's like, I just want to I know the risks. I know I might get hurt, but the possible payoff and the joy of being in love for me personally exceeds the pain. But, there's the pain. Let me ask you this. Sasha. You've had a lot of pain. Clearly, you make that abundantly clear. I've remained single for 9 years. I've had my heart broken and so forth. What do you do, or what have you done to get your pain out when it's come? Or do you still have a lot of pain inside you from past heartbreak? Because it kind of sounds like you do.
before I would say I would eat. I would just eat my feelings.
Sure.
But I've been in counseling for 9 years, so
Good.
I'm a little bit more able to talk about things now.
That's good.
To know, like you said, it's like a train. The feelings are coming, but they're not going to be there forever.
Right.
So I just kind of sit with it now and feel it out.
And do you do any sort of journaling or letter writing? I know you talk with your therapist, which I think is wonderful because that helps us get it out.
Right.
Do you do any sort of journaling or that sort of thing?
I don't do any journaling, but I've been watching and listening to your podcast for 3 years. And the last guy that I attempted to date, I actually ended up writing him like 1 million letters that I never sent him. And it took about 3 months, but I finally was able just to let it go, and it doesn't bother me anymore.
How about that?
So,
how about that? And what was it about the letter writing? If you wrote about 1 million of them, you must have been having some success. Otherwise, you would have stopped writing the letters. Right. So what was the effect for you of writing that first letter? Or maybe nothing really happened until the third letter, but there must have been some effect. What was the effect for you of writing the letters that you didn't send?
I think just being able to get it all out of me. It wasn't in me anymore. So if it's not in you, then you can just let it go. You don't have to, stew on it.
That's right. And just out of curiosity, so you enjoy the letter writing and you've gotten mileage out of that. Then what? And then it's odd that you don't journal as well. And it's fine that you don't. I'm not scolding you or anything. What's the reason you don't journal, like about your thoughts and your feelings on other stuff? What's the reason for that?
I've actually just never thought about it. Like I thought, you kind of have to have a reason, like a heartache or something to write about.
Sure.
Just not from whatever's inside of you.
No, and that's actually a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Sasha. I journal on anything, even when it's not heartache. Like for me personally, you know me, I go to the gym and stuff. But even when I don't go to the gym, like if I'm just sitting out back in my backyard, just having a cigar, I have my journal with me sometimes.
Right.
And I'm just journaling about, boy, it was a rough day. We had this wonderful woman on the show, Sasha, and I feel so bad for her. And gosh, I hope she does this. And boy, she really could use some of that. And I'll just journal about whatever's in my head today. And I'll journal, and then I'll write the question, well, how did it feel when, Sasha mentioned that she had a heartbreak? I was feeling a bit, sad for her. And I'll write out what I'm thinking. I'll write out all my thoughts. I always tell people, I get a lot of people who are overthinkers or have a lot of anxiety and worry. I say that's the best thing that journaling is for, is people who are overthinkers. Because it's like, that clothes dryer analogy that I give. If you put your favorite sweater into the clothes dryer and then you leave it in there and you forget about it, that it's going to roast that thing and it's going to shrink. Well, we kind of like overthinking is like a clothes dryer for our mind, except the thoughts don't get smaller. They get bigger. And if we don't pull them out of there, and that's what journaling does. I just write everything. I'm so worried about what my boss thinks. God, he seemed really upset with me. He didn't say anything to me. But then when I went back later, then he said this, and then my other coworker, Susan, then she came over and she was like, "No, you're fine." But I wasn't sure if you. Write it all out and keep writing it out, because just like you said, you were the one who just said a minute ago, Sasha, that when I write the letter, it gets it out. That's exactly what journaling does for all the other crap. Does that make any sense?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I think that's definitely something that I need to take up.
Sure. And it's just pen and paper. Doesn't require anything special. Although if you want sort of some help with that, my book, Badass Wisdom, it's every day there's a different little snippet and a different little story. And then I also provide journaling questions for each day. And it's a different subject every single day that helps you sort of get into yourself and dig deeper. So that's one potential resource for you. But I want to get back to your paragraph that you sent. You said, every time I think I'm ready to date, I put myself out there. I'm quickly reminded why I've remained single for the last 9 years. What's the reason you've remained single for the last 9 years?
I think mostly heartbreak and letting people just take advantage of me.
And you say, I let people take advantage of me. What would you say is the reason you let people take advantage of you?
Well, before I would say I don't know, but this is something I've been pondering. I don't want people to be mad at me. So
And
I tend to say yes a lot.
Right. And that makes total sense. Those two things make total sense. And the reason you don't want people to be mad at you is because what?
And my counselor asked me this, and it took me 6 months to come up with a reason. But if people are mad at me, then that means they don't like me. And if they don't like me, then I'm not worthy.
That's right. That's right. And if they don't like me and if I'm not worthy, they may leave me. And then, I'd be alone. Right. And then we're alone with all those thoughts that come rising up inside of us, all the shit that you were likely taught about yourself way back there.
Right.
Right. And it's those messages. And so it's interesting that you've been alone. When you've been alone for the last 9 years, what are the messages that are constantly playing or come back up in your head about you? What were the messages you were taught to believe about yourself?
The first 5 years was rough of being alone. I was with my ex for 14 years. I got with him right out of high school, so he was all I'd ever known. And then he was just gone. And so the messages initially were like, you're no good, nobody loves you, you're a piece of shit, like you'll never amount to anything. But I'd say within the past 3 years, like that's changed. I don't hate myself really anymore, which is kind of odd that I'm still in this situation.
Well, then let me ask you, if you don't hate yourself anymore, what do you feel towards yourself? Because there are a lot of other options other than hate.
Right.
Well, let me ask this question first. You say, I don't hate myself anymore. Well, let's just make sure that I'm understanding you. What percent do you hate yourself presently? If you were to be totally honest, maybe it's 0, maybe it's 12, maybe it's 47, maybe it's 98. What percent do you hate yourself?
I would say me as a person, like 10%, but me physically, probably like 50%.
Okay. And as a person, and then physically, 50%. And what is it about yourself as a person that you hate the most?
Probably that I don't really stick up for myself as much as I should.
And why don't you stick up for yourself? Because if I stick up for myself, what? What's the fear?
That I'm not going to have anyone. I'm going to be looked at like I'm a bitch.
Okay. Right. And no one wants to be thought of as a bitch. Right? No, that makes total sense. You don't want to be looked at as a bitch. Have you ever stood up for yourself at all? I mean, in work or with friends or, ever, even one time in your life?
If you would have asked me this a couple years ago, the answer would have been no.
Okay.
But I am saying no more often than I ever have before.
Why are you doing that?
Because I don't want to be miserable anymore.
And do you feel that sometimes when you say no, you're less miserable in that situation?
Yeah.
Oh, let me ask you this. When you say no and stand up for yourself in that situation, are you a bitch?
No.
Oh, how about that? So the thing you hate the most about yourself, your person, is I don't stick up for myself because I don't want to be looked at as a bitch. And yet here you are standing up for yourself, saying no, setting up boundaries, and you're not being a bitch. So let me ask you this. If Rob and his wife were to invite me over for dinner, and for whatever reason, I was just, tired that week or had worked a lot, and, maybe a part of me wants to be with them for sure because they're a lovely couple. But a part of me would feel bad. I don't want to hurt their feelings and so on and so forth. So maybe sometimes I might actually consider going even if I just didn't have the energy. But if I were to say, you know what, I'm going to beg off this time. I'm going to say no this time. I'm just really run down this week and I just need rest. Am I being a bitch or am I being a jerk by just saying no and saying it in a kind way? I love you guys. I just got to pass this time. Am I being an asshole by doing that?
I don't think so, no.
Right. And as long as I'm kind about it, I'm firm but kind. It's not a bitch at all. It's just being straight up and honest. And I know if Rob didn't want to come over to my house for dinner, or his wife was just feeling under the weather, or just they'd had a rough week, or they just didn't feel like it that day. I'd want them to just relax and do what's right for them.
Right.
That's okay. So it's the mere fact, Sasha, the mere fact that in the last 3 years you have had the courage to begin to say no. Do you understand what you're doing when you do that? What you are doing when you do that, in the past, you wouldn't stand up and say no because you believed you were a piece of shit and no good and not lovable. And so you didn't feel justified standing up for yourself. So by you standing up for yourself, you're basically saying, I matter. That's the underlying message you are sending to the universe, to life, to your own self. I matter enough to say no. Do you see how that's a pretty fucking huge victory?
Yeah. It feels like a big victory, but I don't really take as much credit as I should.
Well, and that's right. And that doesn't surprise me, Sasha. That's because your whole life you were taught that you're a piece of shit. And so bit by bit, you are changing your beliefs and you're changing your actions. And that is forcing out of you, bit by bit, it is forcing out those beliefs that you're no good. You are like a walking success story, bit by bit. It's really quite remarkable. And so let me ask you then, so that self-hatred of your person is getting smaller over time, and I really think that's great. And you're squeezing out those old beliefs, kicking them out of you. You said that you physically hate yourself 50%. What do you hate the most about yourself physically?
I'm chunky.
Okay. And you don't like that?
No, not really.
Why don't you like that?
Because other people told me it's not attractive.
Okay. And has anyone ever told you that it's beautiful?
No. I mean, people have told me I'm attractive, but I don't believe them.
So you only believe the people who put you down.
Correct.
What do you make of that?
I don't know.
Well, then let me ask you this. If you only believe the people who put you down, then how do you explain yourself? How do you explain that you only hate yourself 50%? Because if you only believed them, wouldn't you hate yourself 100%? Your body?
Right. Well, I think it's because I don't hate all of my body.
What don't you hate about your body? What don't you hate? What do you love about it?
I like my eyes and my arms, my legs.
It's awesome.
My feet are nice.
Hey, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's right. Nothing wrong with that. And a lot of people love feet. That's all right.
I know.
Everybody has their thing. I think it's fantastic that you love that about yourself. I think that's fantastic. I had a client, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Real, fella had done well for himself, blue collar guy, but he'd done real well for himself. And he had always been shamed as a kid and told that he was fat. Right. And, in high school especially. And so he hated himself in high school, hated himself. And he was now in his mid to late 30s. And he was working with me probably no more than a few weeks, month. And he came back in the next session. He said, Sven, it's so interesting. I said, what? He said, I went back and I was looking at some of my high school yearbook photos and just some photos from high school. I said, when did you do that? When was the last time you did that? He said, I don't know if I ever have. They've been packed away. And I just happened to be going through some boxes and I thought, oh, what the hell? And he said, Sven, I was looking back through them. I wasn't fat. I was a few extra pounds. I wasn't fat. I was actually kind of a cute kid. He said, hey, what a bunch of shit that I was taught to believe about myself. And I believed it. I said, of course you believed it. You were a kid. Let me ask you this. How long, Sasha, in your life, when did you get the very earliest message that you're unattractive or that your body is wrong or bad?
The first, 5.
5. And what was the message you got at 5 years old about your appearance?
Well, I'm not so sure that it was a message. I just remember being 5 and going out on my neighbor's boat and not wanting to take my pants and my shirt off to be in my bathing suit. But I'm not really sure that anyone ever directly said anything.
Fair enough.
To me about my body.
Well, okay, that's really interesting. And it could be that no one ever said anything directly, or it could be that somebody said something indirectly, or what sometimes happens with adults, or even with other kids, like siblings or kids or whatever, but what often happens is what I call crosstalk or even self-talk. So
Right.
crosstalk between adults, let's say, I'm just making something up here, but let's just say you had a dad who said, "Oh, I hate fat chicks," or, "Oh, wow, she's a real sow," or whatever, right? Or, right. Or that client I was telling you about, the blue-collar fellow who'd done well and grew up thinking he was had, he said he used to tell me that what he heard wasn't the crosstalk between the parents, but he would always hear his dad's self-talk.
Right.
And dad was always talking about himself. "Oh, man, I'm so ugly. God, I'm overweight. Oh, I need to lose 50 pounds. And he'd get down on himself." And he said, "Sven, that voice just fucking ingrained in me." So I began to look at myself. Well, maybe I'm fat too, because that's my dad, and I love my dad. And gee, if he sucks, I must suck too. All that. Was there ever crosstalk or self-talk that you overheard?
I don't think so. My parents were actually addicts.
Okay.
So
And
they probably, I don't really remember my mom complaining about her body ever.
fair enough. Then what I'm willing to bet, see, a child wouldn't naturally be conscious about taking off their shirt and pants and showing their bathing suit. Okay,
Right.
and you remember at 5 years old, but let's be honest, if you're out on a boat at 5 years old, you're going to go swimming or water skiing or whatever, it's reasonable to assume that 5 years old was not the first time you wore a bathing suit or wore a bathing suit with other people around.
Right.
So, it's reasonable to assume that you had been doing that probably your whole life, and which implies then that at some point you had a bad experience.
Right.
Somebody shamed you, somebody insulted you, or you heard somebody's message, crosstalk or self-talk, or talk about, people who are overweight or about body image or something, or somebody significant in your life shamed you about your body.
Right. A lot of my childhood I don't remember.
And to what do you attribute that?
Actually, I think maybe some sexual assault, but I'm not really sure.
And very often when people have forgotten things in their childhood, it's sort of the child's own self-protection mechanism. It just shuts down shit because it's too painful to remember.
Right.
And so I want to ask you a follow-up question on the potential sexual assault, crap. I want to ask you a question on that right after this short break.
So I was telling a buddy of mine how he seems happier. He told me about the book that changed his life. So I bit. I went to the Badass Counseling website and downloaded There's a Hole in My Love Cup audiobook. I started listening to it on my commute home from work, and holy cow, it was a Louisville slugger to the face. I literally sat in my car in the driveway night after night, listening through to the end of a chapter or doing the journaling exercises. My wife started to see changes. I started to change a lot. My default response stopped always being anger. Now I manage a team of salespeople, and I changed as a leader. I was listening more, not always just reacting. When their numbers started going up seemingly out of nowhere, I knew what the reason was. There's a Hole in My Love Cup is now required listening for any person on my sales team or working for me, and I gladly buy it for them. You gotta listen to this book.
This show provides soul counseling intended to entertain and inform and is not medical advice. Now, back to the badass.
And we are back with Sasha. Sasha, you said there might have been some sort of sexual something in your past, in your childhood. What makes you think there might have been that?
Well, I'm guessing that happened like around 5 or 6 years old, but I didn't remember it until all of a sudden this memory came back when I was like 13. And so like, am I making this up or did this actually happen? And I just...
So so the memory came up, you're 13 years old, and then you have this memory of being 5 years old and something happening. Is that right?
Correct.
And just briefly, what was the memory that you had?
An older cousin sexually abusing me.
Okay. Older cousin sexually abusing you. And that was back when you were 13 that you first had that memory. And at first you thought, gee, am I making this up? Where is this coming from? What the hell is this? What have you done with that thought, or what are your thoughts on that memory since then?
I kind of just don't think about it. I did ask my sibling, who was around the same age as me, a few years younger, about just like certain things I remember about that time, and they confirmed similar things. Not sexual assault or anything, but just like things that I remember us doing on that specific day before the incident. So I'm like, leads me to believe that it did happen.
That makes total sense. Of course. Now you have a context for it.
Right.
And just out of curiosity, and there's no right or wrong answer, just a question. Why would you doubt yourself? Why would you doubt your memory? Now, I mean, when you're 13, fine,
Right.
We're all, dumb teenagers, whatever, but we don't know what to think. But why would you doubt it now?
Well, because this person who did this, I mean, they were still in my life, and they act like nothing happened.
Well, how, well, let me ask you, and okay, that's fair. How would you think they would act if they sexually assaulted someone?
Guilty?
They would act guilty? I see.
Right. Or they wouldn't be so like normal, like nothing happened. I don't know. That's just weird to me.
Right. And to me, it actually makes complete sense. I'm not saying it's good. It's
Right.
bad. It's bad. Okay.
Right. Right.
But what I'm saying, it makes complete sense. Why? They want to pretend like nothing happened. Why? Because if I show that I'm guilty, or if I look sheepish or something, it's an admission of guilt. They don't want to admit that. Who the fuck would want to admit that they sexually molested a 4 or 5-year-old child?
Right.
Right. And if they admitted it, there might be fear that they might even go to jail, or they'd become a pariah for sure. They'd be an outcast. No. They are happy to not admit it. They're happy to pretend like everything's fine.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's one reason why I never confronted them, because I just feel like they would just deny it and make me feel even crazier.
They absolutely would deny it. And
Yeah.
I think the only crazy part is that you don't trust yourself. And I don't mean crazy. I'm not
Right.
using that. But I think the sad part is that you don't trust
Yeah.
yourself. I believe you 100%, because the truth is somebody's not going to make that shit up. You're not going to make that shit up. You don't want that fucking memory. That's the last fucking thing, right? So
Right.
then I want to ask a follow-up question about the swimsuit then when you were 5.
Sure.
To the degree, the best you're able, and it sounds like you have pretty clear memory. You're on a boat, and you recall having shirt and pants on over your swimsuit. Is the reason just do your best, and there's no right or wrong answer. And if you can't remember, that's totally fine. But just out of curiosity, Sasha, was the reason you didn't want to take off your shirt and pants and be in your swimsuit? Is it because you felt shame about being fat?
I think I just didn't want someone to see my body.
That's what I was going to ask. Or is it you didn't want someone to see your body? Is it possible the reason you didn't want someone to see your body is because you fear that then they might hurt you inappropriately, touch you inappropriately, something? You didn't want draw attention to your body.
Right.
That's it. Let the tears come, Sasha. It's totally okay. Take your time. Let those tears come, sweetheart. You are keeping yourself safe. By leaving your clothes on, you are trying to protect yourself.
And I think that's also when I started gaining weight.
Is it possible that the weight is a self-protection mechanism to keep people away?
Definitely.
Yep. You simultaneously want to be close to someone and are scared to get close. Scared, and you want to keep people away because you're scared of the pain. Is that possible?
It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Because it is possible. It is because it's happened.
That's right. You've been protecting yourself ever since you were 5 years old. The weight is not your enemy. The weight has been your best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a double-edged sword.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And that makes total sense. No, you weren't getting comments about your weight. You had had a traumatic experience that caused you to basically want to hide your body, to be shame. And you know, I mean, you know, our culture and weight, it's bad, which is bullshit, you know. A chunky woman, as you describe yourself, can be wonderful and beautiful.
Right.
It's all in what you think of yourself. But you've been taught to, you know, hate your own body on half it. But the reason you were doing it to begin with was to protect yourself, because clearly you weren't being protected.
Right. And that probably explains why I was always uncomfortable to be around any men alone, whether they were somebody I trusted or not. I just didn't want to be around them.
Say that again. You were uncomfortable being around men alone. Did I hear you correctly on that?
Yeah, I would go to my friend's house, and her dad was a single father, and he was a totally fine guy, but I just never wanted to be alone with him.
So think about that. No matter who it is, you can't trust men, or have felt that. That little child in you has always been afraid of being alone around a man. Would that be accurate or inaccurate?
Accurate.
Right?
Yeah.
And it makes total sense. Of course she's afraid to be around men. It's not that she hates men or something like that. No, it sounds like you actually would enjoy having a relationship with a man. But I'm just terrified of men. I don't know who I can trust. And when you're wounded at a very young age, you feel like you can't trust anybody, any man.
Yeah, I don't trust very easily.
Of course. And you not trusting easily has been the best thing that could ever happen to you. That was the smartest thing you could have done. When you're a child and you're harmed, you grew that animal instinct in us that is trying to protect ourselves becomes fearful because it's a mean old world out there. You know, that's what that child thinks, because the child was wounded, traumatized, hurt. And of course you're going to be afraid. And also, though, what's working against you is that you had parents who taught you you're no good, you're not lovable, you're a piece of shit, and you'll never amount to anything. So the enemy has been inside of you, right?
Yeah, pretty much from the beginning.
That's right, which also means if a child is taught that they're a piece of shit and they're no good, then a child, and you already confirmed this when you brought up the memory at 13 years old, a child is then taught to not trust themselves.
I never trusted.
That's right. And you said that
right,
even at 13, you didn't trust your own memory. Am I making this up? Which, I mean, a little bit of that is kind of normal. But you were taught, no. If you teach a person they're shit, they're not even going to like themselves. They're not going to trust themselves. They're not going to listen to their own voice. They're not going to trust their own intuition. They're just going to question themselves at every turn, tear themselves down at every turn. Does that make sense?
It definitely does, because I've experienced that.
Bingo.
That's been my life.
That's a bingo.
My entire life.
That's a bingo. Yep. And the truth is, Sasha, it was bullshit to begin with. There was never anything wrong with you. You were just a sweet, wonderful, cute, smart, playful, creative, cranky when you didn't get a nap little girl. You were a wonderful child, and you were taught to hate yourself, both externally, your body, by what that very bad person did to you, and internally by the messages mom and dad put inside of you. Let me ask you a question. What are you feeling right now? Give me a feeling word.
Relief.
Really?
Because I've actually never told anyone that.
Oh, beautiful. I admire your courage, sweetie. I admire your courage.
Thank you.
What was the hardest part to say out loud that you've never said? What was the hardest part to say?
That someone sexually abused me.
You had never said that out loud before?
No.
Wow. Wow.
I haven't even told my counselor, and I've been seeing them for 9 years.
So why did you say it this time? Why did you say it today?
Well, honestly, I think that has been the biggest issue for me, and it's time. It's time to let it all go.
Wow. We are humbled that you trust us with such an intimate piece of your life. And I now admire you even more that you had the courage to say it for the first time in your life. What percent did you have clarity in your past that this happened? What percent did you know it, or did you doubt yourself too the whole time?
No, I had pretty good clarity.
Good.
Like, I knew.
And what's been the fear in not saying it? The fear is, if I say it, then what? What did you fear happening?
People think differently of me.
What did you most fear them thinking of you? What would have been the one sentence that would hurt the very most if someone said it, if you were to reveal the secret? What is the one sentence that would hurt the most if someone said it to you or thought it about you?
That I deserved it, or it happened because of something I did.
Okay. That you deserved it, that the sexual molesting of a 5-year-old, the 5-year-old must have deserved it, or it was because something the 5-year-old did. That was the fear, right?
Right.
And let me
Sounds ridiculous.
No, that's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It makes total sense. That's how powerful an experience it is, that the person is taught to hate themselves, and the person lives in fear that if people knew it, they would think I'm dirty, or they would think I made it happen, or I wanted it, or I deserved it because I was bad, or whatever. That's what a child's brain thinks. That's how much shame gets kicked up inside the spirit of that little girl. Well, and then the mere fact that you say it sounds ridiculous, that means you realize there's no way a 5-year-old could have. No, 5-year-old is innocent.
Right, because I have a child, and there's no way.
Which means, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
If let's say you're a teacher at a school and you're in charge of the playground at recess, and all the kids are out playing, and you happen to notice across the way, 50 yards away, you notice some big girl pushing down, or tall girl, like a 6th grader, shoving down a little 3rd grader, and maybe saying, "You little bitch." Okay. What do we call that tall 6th grader? What do we call somebody who does that?
A bully?
A bully, exactly. That's exactly right. Anytime someone has power and they use it to hurt another human being who has less power, we call that a bully or a tyrant, right? Okay.
Right.
What do we call the other person, or what do we call that smaller country, or the smaller whatever, that's that little 3rd grade girl? What do we call that person who just got bullied? We call that person a what?
Well, the first thing that came to mind is a victim. But
There you go. That's exactly right. You were a victim. Now, whether you like that word or not is irrelevant, because by definition, you literally, by definition, were a victim. You were a victim, and someone hurt you. And just so I have a little bit of clarity, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, it's fine. How old was the person who did this?
I believe they're like 6 or 7 years older.
Older.
Yeah.
So if you were 5, they were, or 4 or 5, somewhere in there, they were likely 10 or 11
I think
or 12.
they were, because I'm not for sure certain. This happened probably between 5 and 7 years old.
Okay.
So they were probably like 12 or 13.
Right. And if they were 7 years old, and if they were 7 years older than you, and you were 7 years old, then they would have been even 14 potentially.
Right.
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 Right. So we're dealing with someone who clearly was doing a bad thing and knew they were doing a bad thing, a very bad thing. And it was not your fault. It's not your fault, Sasha. It wasn't your fault, Sasha.
I don't think that it could be my fault because I was just a child.
That's a bingo. That's exactly right. You were a child. You were a sweet, wonderful little girl. And this young monster hurt you. And you've been taught because of that, as well as the fact that your parents didn't protect you from that happening, but then your parents infiltrated your inner belief system.
I was just going to say they weren't great either.
No, clearly. If they're if they're teaching their child you're no good and you're not lovable and piece of shit and you'll never amount to anything, it's not just they weren't good. They were fucking horrible parents. I'm sorry, you don't say that to a child ever, 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 ever.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Of course.
100%.
Do you have children of your own?
Yeah, one adult son.
Okay. And did you tell your son that he was no good and not lovable and a piece of shit?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Well, one, it's not true. And two, because he's innocent. He's my child. I love him.
Right. So what you're fundamentally telling me is that you deviated from the way you were parented. Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that means you disagreed with your parents' parenting technique, at least on that one very significant thing. Just out of curiosity, what % of your parents' parenting technique did you deliberately employ in the parenting of your own child?
Deliberately, zero.
Zero. So you are fundamentally saying, and well, then let me ask you this question. What % were your parents a good parent?
Well, I don't know what good means, but I would say
by your definition, whatever feels right to you, what % were they a good parent?
5%.
5% good and 95% bad.
Yeah. As I say, they housed us and kept us fed.
And
that was it.
Okay. And yet, when I asked you the question, what % did you deliberately employ your parents' parenting? You said 0, which would seem to imply they were 0% good parents. Because if they were even 5%, you would have employed that. And I'm sure you're going to say, well, I did. But in all honesty, is it possible that even when there's 5% good, it gets completely outweighed by all the bad? Isn't that really what we're talking about?
Yes.
And what fundamentally, as you see it, was the biggest crime that your parents committed against you?
They didn't protect us.
Right.
They didn't keep us safe.
Right. But also and that's almost a sin of omission. That's almost a passive sin. It could almost be interpreted as they didn't take action to protect us, which is a true statement. They didn't. Okay. But they also actively inserted a virus inside of you of you're a piece of shit. You're no good. You're not lovable. You'll never amount to anything. So they weren't just passive. It's not just that they didn't do something. It's also that they actively, deliberately hurt someone. Just out of curiosity, if a little boy is in second grade, okay? If a little boy, let's say third grade, if a little boy is in third grade, and let's say his name is Justin, and little Justin is out in the hallway and he's mad at Derek, and little Justin says to Derek, "You're a dummy." And then little Derek says back to him, "No, I'm not." Okay. When little Justin says that to Derek, does he know that calling Justin a dummy will hurt Justin? Does he know that? Or that'll hurt Derek, excuse me. Does he know that?
I think so in third grade.
Right. Because otherwise, why would he even be saying it?
Right.
He's saying it with the
he
intent.
knows what it means.
And he's saying it out in the hallway, maybe where the teacher can't hear it. He's saying it with the intent to hurt Derek. And even Derek, by his response saying, "No, I'm not," he knows that being called a dummy is a bad thing. And he's saying, I'm not a dummy, right?
Yeah.
So even he knows that. Okay. So that means a third grader knows calling someone a dummy is bad. So when your parents say you're no good, you're not lovable, you're a piece of shit, and you'll never amount to anything, they knew that those things would cause harm. They knew that that would hurt you. If a third grader knows that dummy hurts, a third grader, then I guarantee a grown-ass adult knowing that piece of shit and no good and never amount to anything, they know that that's going to hurt. That means they willfully chose to hurt you. It was a choice to literally speak these words that I know are going to hurt you. We call that malice, malicious, with the intent to do harm. You had parents who weren't just passive in not protecting you, they deliberately sought to hurt you.
Yeah, my mom, I actually don't have any contact with her because she's not a good person.
Right. So you have taken steps to create a boundary and protect yourself from her. Just out of curiosity, when did you sort of kick her out of your life?
I'd say probably about 15 years ago.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, 15 years ago, you took a step to create a boundary to protect yourself. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that means 15 years ago, you believed that you mattered enough to kick your mother out of your life.
Yeah, I kind of woke up to her bullshit.
Yeah, and the real bullshit that you woke up to was the belief, whether you weren't aware of it. But
Right.
the real bullshit that you weren't aware of is the bullshit belief that says you're not worth standing up for, and you stood up for yourself. Do you see how big a victory that is? That for a child to be taught that they're not worth a shit, and then to have the courage to stand up and say, no,
Right.
you're not welcome in my life. That's a motherfucking victory. Do you see that?
I guess I just don't really, I think that these things just happen, but my counselor always tells me I need to take more responsibility because I did this.
That's right.
Like,
Your therapist, your counselor is spot on the money. And it's not even, I would use different language from you need to take responsibility because that almost seems like, you're irresponsible. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, woohoo!
Right.
Before you even started seeing your therapist, who you said you've been seeing for 9 years, 6 years prior to that, all by yourself, you just acted sort of from your own intuition or sense of self, from your own soul. You spoke up for yourself long before you started seeing a therapist. That is an affirmation. That is a public statement of your own worth. Even if it was just a little bit, that was a bold ass step.
Thank you. I never really looked at it that way.
Hells yes. I would kill to have a whole lot of my clients and people I work with taking those bold steps before they even work with me. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then the steps you've taken since then, and that you're standing up for yourself and saying no more, and you don't see yourself as a bitch when you're not, because you're not a bitch. You're just saying no. You're just saying no. And I talk about this in my book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup. One of the things I say is when we're kids, the single scariest word in the English language is hearing the word no. No, you can't have that candy bar in the checkout line, Sven. No, you can't have the Crunch Berries either. No, Sven, you can't have the Oreos. No, you can't go to band camp, Sven. Okay, no, you can't have karate lessons. We can't afford it. Okay, we hate hearing the word no. It's scary when we're a kid, but when we're adults, no. The scariest word when we're adults is saying the word no.
It's the truth too.
That's it. And you know it loud and clear, because the fear is if I say it, you won't like me, or you'll think I'm bad or a bitch or that I'm mean or something, versus no. No is a good word. And it's you standing up for yourself. It's you confirming your worth, and shoot, then people appreciate the yeses even more. But your fear of saying no finds its root in the belief, the bullshit belief you were taught about yourself, that you're a piece of shit, that you don't have worth, that you're no good. Let me ask you sort of one last question here, Sasha, and that is, what question do you have for me? if you have one?
I guess just how do I love myself? I guess.
Great question.
What do I do?
Great question. You don't. And what I mean by that is, and that's kind of a silly answer, it's a little playful answer, but we don't increase our self-love by trying to love ourselves more. We increase our self-love by getting out of us all the messages that undercut our self-love, all the self-hate messages, all the pain. So what you did today was you admitted something for the first time in your entire life. Well, that's you getting some of the pain out of you. And the truth is, the more you tell that story, whether to your counselor or, maybe you get in a group for a sexual abuse survivor, or maybe you just happen to tell it to a friend. And I'm not pushing you to do this. I'm just saying the more comfortable you get with your story, the less you see it as bad, the less fear you have. But what you need to begin to more and more identify, as we did today, is identifying those messages and the beliefs you were taught about yourself. So in this case, and this is one of those situations where I strongly, strongly recommend that you get my book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup, because it walks you through that exact process of, and there's a workbook that goes with it. And I don't know if you have the book yet. Do you?
Yeah, I bought it 3 years ago, and I actually just started it right before I sent you the email.
Oh, how about that? Good.
Yeah.
I got to ask. I love hearing when people say that. Sven, I have it, and it's been sitting on my bedside stand just staring at me, or I'm afraid to open it, Sven.
Yeah, I was afraid.
Is that what it was? And what?
Yeah, I was afraid because I'm going to have to go deep. I'm going to have to cry.
Yeah, you're going to have to cry. What is it about crying you don't like, Sasha?
Just doing a lot of it.
Understood. And that crying is your healing, as well as the journaling that goes with it and writing those letters that go with it. And there are lots of journaling exercises in there. And you can just, you if you want, some people just go and they read through it first and they don't do the journaling exercises, or they maybe only do one or two as they go. And there's a lot more journaling exercises in the workbook that goes with it. But the point is, take your time. There's no rush.
That's what I was doing. I was reading through it, and then I was going to go back and read it again and answer the questions.
Awesome. I love that idea. And Sasha, you have to understand that every single one of these steps, learning to say no, kicking your mom out, 13, 14 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was, and then starting to see a counselor and working through that self-hatred and starting to say no, and then speaking this one truth tonight that you've never spoken, even coming on this show and buying the book 3 years ago, and then starting it recently and coming on this show even. All of these things, every single one of them, as my mother used to say, the message behind the message. What's the message behind the message? What's the message behind all of Sasha's actions of all these things? The underlying message, or the message behind the message, is Sasha is realizing that she matters, and she's taking steps to act on that belief. That, my friend, is beautiful.
Thank you. It feels good.
Give me a feeling word. What are you feeling right now? And I'm not going to let you say good, because anger can feel good, sadness can feel good, happy can feel good. So it's not really a feeling word. Give me a feeling word. What are you feeling right now, Sasha?
Excited for the future.
Beautiful. And the truth is, the more you get all this pain out of you, the fears out of you, and the bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself, the more you do that, the more you work with a book, that's going to supercharge your counseling sessions. You're going to get so much more out of counseling because you're going to go deeper. But the more you get all this crap out of you, you're going to be a completely different person when you're dating. You're going to learn to say no. You're not going to be afraid to put it out there. You're going to be, and you're going to feel quite comfortable just going slower. You're going to feel comfortable listening to your own voice. And you're going to feel comfortable being alone. It is going to completely change your dating. You're not going to be afraid anymore the more you go into this. Well, and I want to say to you, Sasha, you're a peach. It's just been so sweet having you on, and you were so vulnerable. Wow.
Thank you, Sven.
Yeah.
It's been great. It's been great talking with you.
No,
it's like a dream come true.
Get out of here. Get out of here. It's been a dream come true for us, because it doesn't happen very often. It's happened a few times on the show, Rob, where we have someone reveal something for the very first time. It's maybe only happened a handful of times, and you are one of them. And we feel honored that you trusted us with your story, with your secret. And I know I speak for the team. Casey is already nodding her head. She knows what I'm going to say. But we're just so excited for the growth that's going to happen because you cracked open a big nut today. And it now is when the healing really, really is going to pick up some momentum. And so just know that we are all cheering you on here, Sasha. Rob, any final thoughts?
You know, I hate to compliment you, Sven, but I have to say that you and Sasha were so impressive to me. I think it's the best example I've ever seen on our show of connecting the dots. That once she confronted that memory, it just one thing led to another, and you guided her right along the way, and she did it. I'm really pleased for her, and I'm impressed with you, I must say.
Thank you, Rob. It's very kind of you, but I do have to say that she was the one doing the work. I'm just the guy who asked the questions. Thank you, Rob.
I said that too.
Yep. And how much I love someone who has the courage to confront it. And I felt like the real breakthrough, or when the tears started. Sasha, did you catch that? And Rob, that the tears really started when we named that the reason you kept your clothes on was to hide your body. That it wasn't shame over your weight per se, is that you didn't want anyone to see you. You were trying to be safe. And that the weight too, then we said that after that, but it was to hide your body. Do you remember? That's when you started crying.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the realization. That was the verbalization.
Those were the dots that started to get connected.
Yep. Well, you are a courageous woman, Sasha, and keep up that courage. And just keep bringing the courage to your healing work. And this healing doesn't have to take forever. It doesn't have to take another 5 years or even another 3 years. The deeper you go, the faster the healing. And you have clearly shown today that you have the courage. So I know your healing journey is going to be just fantastic. I believe in you.
Thank you, Sven. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And to all of our listeners around the world, I know many of you are identifying with Sasha's story and that she had the courage to come on. And I know we regularly get people writing in thanking a guest, or if they're following the show along, saying, wow, Sasha is telling my story, or wow, what courage. Now I want to go in further and do my work. So I think we're all grateful for Sasha, because it helps us reflect on our own stuff. In the words of C.S. Lewis, we read to know that we are not alone. Or in this case, we listen to people's stories to know we're not alone, and it teaches us about ourselves. So I think we are all grateful to be at the feet of our teacher today, and our teacher was Sasha. Thank you, Sasha, for teaching us, and to all of our friends around the world, thank you for tuning in. On behalf of my team, have a kick-ass day.
The Badass Counseling Show is strictly copyrighted. No copies may be made without the express written consent of the Badass Counseling Show, LLC. The Badass Counseling Show is produced by Karen Camparelli and Robert H. Friedman. Executive producer Sven Erlandson. Original music by two-time Emmy Award-winning composer Trevor Morris. Have a kick-ass day.